In the heart of the American South, there is a territory that shouldn't exist, a land that defies the laws of geology, built entirely from the dust and debris of 31 different states. On paper, Louisiana holds the keys to the kingdom. It controls the mouth of the Mississippi, the most critical economic artery on the planet. If Louisiana were its own country, it would be the gateway to the world's most fertile hinterland. It should be as wealthy as Singapore, as stable as Switzerland, and as influential as New York. But instead, Louisiana is disappearing. It is losing land to the sea at a rate that defies logic. One football field every hour and a half. This isn't just a story about hurricanes or climate change. It's a story of a 100-year-old engineering mistake, a toxic relationship with the oil industry, and a river that is literally trying to commit a geographic kidnapping. Today, we're going deep into the Delta to understand why America's most important state is in a state of total collapse. To understand the fall of Louisiana, we have to look past the jazz and the swamps. We need to look at the plumbing of a continent. In this documentary, we will investigate the 4 pillars of this collapse. First, the geological illusion, why building on mud was a mistake from day one. Second, the old river control, a concrete wall that is the only thing standing between the U.S. economy and total chaos. Third, the extraction paradox, how the oil industry enriched the world but impoverished the local soil. And finally, the political structure that has turned this strategic gold mine into a sacrifice zone. You aren't just watching a video about geography, you're watching the autopsy of a failing empire of mud. If you want to know how the most strategic point in America became its most fragile, keep watching. Let's start with a hard truth. Southern Louisiana is not made of rock, it's made of leftovers. For 7,000 years, the Mississippi River acted like a giant conveyor belt, carrying mountains of sediment from the Rockies and the Appalachians down to the Gulf of Mexico. Every year, it deposited millions of tons of mud, creating new land. This is a process called progradation. Louisiana was born from the river's breath. But there's a fundamental flaw. Because this land is just a pile of wet silt and clay, it is naturally heavy. Under its own weight, the sediment compacts and sinks. This is what geologists call subsidence. In a natural state, the river would flood every spring, spreading fresh mud across the plains to recharge the land. It was a perfect self-sustaining cycle. It's as if you built a metropolis on top of a castle made of cotton candy just as it starts to rain. But in 1927, everything changed. After a catastrophic flood, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers decided to tame the beast. They built the longest levee system in the world. They essentially put the Mississippi in a straitjacket of concrete and steel. The floods stopped, the cities were safe, but the land died. Without fresh sediment, the state began to starve. Today, the Louisiana coast is like a house whose foundation is being washed away from underneath, while the roof is being pelted by rising sea levels. We've embalmed the Mississippi, and in doing so, we've signed the death warrant of the land it created. It's a pincer movement of physics that no amount of concrete can stop forever. But there's a much more immediate threat than sinking land. It's a process called stream capture. Rivers are lazy. They always want the shortest, steepest path to the ocean. For decades, the Mississippi has been eyeing a shortcut, the Atchafalaya River. If the Mississippi were allowed to follow its natural instinct, it would jump its banks and flow down the Atchafalaya, bypassing New Orleans and Baton Rouge entirely. If this happens, the consequences would be apocalyptic. The port of South Louisiana, the largest by tonnage in the Western Hemisphere, would become a stagnant pond of salt water. Tens of billions of dollars in infrastructure would be rendered useless overnight. To prevent this, the government built the Old River Control Structure. It is a massive mechanical gate that forces 70% of the water to stay in the old channel and allows only 30% into the shortcut. In 1973, during a massive flood, this structure almost failed. Engineers watched in horror as the river began to eat the ground underneath the concrete. They managed to save it, but the war isn't over. We are currently engaged in a multi-billion-dollar struggle against gravity. We are holding a continental-scale river hostage, and the river is getting angrier every year. Every time a major hurricane or flood hits, we are one mechanical failure away from a national economic heart attack. Imagine the entire U.S. supply chain depending on a single concrete wall in the middle of a swamp. That is the reality of Louisiana today.
You would think that a state sitting on one of the world's largest reserves of oil and natural gas would be a utopia. Look at Dubai or Norway. But Louisiana is the victim of the resource curse. Since the first oil well was drilled, the state's economy has been hijacked by a single industry. Instead of diversifying, Louisiana became a company town for big oil. Through a system of massive tax exemptions, specifically the Industrial Tax Exemption Program, the state has given away billions in potential revenue to multinational corporations. While the companies made record profits, the local infrastructure crumbled. But the damage isn't just financial, it's physical. The oil industry carved thousands of miles of canals through the protective salt marshes to lay pipelines. These canals acted like veins for salt water, allowing the ocean to penetrate deep into the freshwater swamps, killing the trees and accelerating the erosion. Then there is the human cost. The corridor between Baton Rouge and New Orleans is home to some of the highest cancer rates in the country. It's a landscape of heavy industry where the air literally smells like chemicals. This has led to a massive brain drain. If you're a talented young engineer or doctor born in Louisiana, your first instinct is to get out. You move to Houston, Dallas, or Atlanta. Louisiana is losing its most valuable resource, its people. It's an engine burning itself out just to keep the car moving for everyone else. None of this happened by accident. It is the result of a political culture that is unique in the United States. To understand it, you have to understand Huey P. Long, the Kingfish. In the 1930s, Long created a populist machine that provided roads and schools, but at the cost of total systemic corruption. He turned the state into a patronage system where loyalty was more important than competence. This pay-to-play culture never truly left. In Louisiana, the line between the regulators and the regulated is often invisible. This has created a paralyzing status quo. While other states invest in high-tech or green energy, Louisiana's leadership is often locked in a cycle of protecting the industries of the past. It's an industrial middle age where the elites profit from the decline. Even the efforts to save the coast are mired in controversy. The Coastal Master Plan is a $50 billion project, but many argue it's too little, too late. It's a plan that involves sediment diversions, basically poking holes in the levees to let mud back in. But this threatens the existing fishing industries. It's a classic Louisiana trap. Every solution creates a new conflict of interest. The political weight of the state is so heavy that it's helping the geography sink even faster. When emergency management becomes more profitable than problem solving, you know the system is broken. So, why is Louisiana collapsing? It's not one thing, it's a perfect storm. First, the ground itself is sinking because we stopped the natural floods that built it. Second, the Mississippi River is fighting to change its course, threatening to abandon the nation's largest port. Third, the oil industry has accelerated the erosion of the coast while failing to enrich the local population. And fourth, a political system that is too tangled in its own history to enact real change. Louisiana is the canary in the coal mine for the rest of the world. It shows us what happens when we try to dominate nature rather than work with it. It shows us that strategic importance means nothing if the ground you're standing on isn't solid. Louisiana didn't just fail, it was turned into a sacrifice zone to allow the rest of America to function. It's the motor that burns itself to keep the nation running, but the fuel is running out. Louisiana's struggle for survival is a warning for every coastal region on the planet. If you want to explore how other geographies are facing extreme challenges between nature and man, be sure to check out our deep dive into the anomalies of the Gulf of California, or our analysis of Australia's unique geological isolation. Subscribe to help us map the most fascinating and fragile places in the world. Thanks for watching.